back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I'm wearing my State Fair shirt. We're going to be getting back out the State Fair, al fresco on May 21st, working that out with Evan Brown, doing a little Catonsville celebration with Don Mohler, my partner in crime, 1982 high school guidance counselor, and also agreeer that we should be beginning our crab cake tour at Fadley's at Lexington Market. We're going to have John Sarbanes joining us with that next weekend as we get ready for Preakness. And then I'm heading over to a place where I've headed for many, many crab cakes in May, especially on Mother's Day weekend, Costas over in Dundalk, to start the crab cake tour. I'm going to make my way to Pizza John's before it's all over. Bruce Chris is going to hear from me. We're going to get around town. My dear friend Brian at the Chaucer up in Highlandtown is going to hear from me. I'm going to check out that crab cake, which I have not had yet. Don, how are you? Everything okay with you? You and I do this Recon. And I know you want to talk about Johnny O and this and that. We have other segments to do that in. I figure I'm wearing my Oriole hat. Something very, very special happened here. I'm celebrating my 30th year on the radio, and we've never had it happen. That's how unique. We've had 2 Super Bowls, right? Like we've lost a franchise and brought one back. We've lost a hockey team. We've had all sorts of things happen. Not had a no-hitter. So I really wanted to sort of this table politics in this segment and stick to sports the way we did up at the Bird's Nest Cafe. Remember that when we broadcast at the Holiday Inn, me and you, Sutcliffe?
Absolutely. Tom Cap, Dave Muir, the esteemed sports huddle. I mean, it was
great. Dwight Weller up there making it work. The late great Dwight Weller. I do want to say this. I found a picture of you on stage with me and Billick, maybe in 2002, 3, 4, 5. What? Do you remember getting on stage at the barn and talking to Brian Billick with me? Do you remember this? Because I have a picture, but I don't remember it.
I mean, I was at the barn for a number of segments. I don't specifically remember the one.
Well, you and I have talked far more sports than politics. This Baltimore Positive thing happened when you were running the county, and I came to you, and we sat on the porch in Catonsville and said, let's get Dutch to Pizza John's. And we had no idea where this thing was really going to go. But sports was – the basis of you coming on the air with me, even before you were in politics, when you were school teaching, you were doing this stuff with me, right?
Oh, no doubt about it. We bonded over sports from the time you were a pudgy little 9th grader before you were fit and trim and ready to go. At Dundalk High School.
I prefer to call myself an Ovaltine. I prefer that. I've had fun with
9th graders.
Well, hey,
9th graders are pudgy.
You knew me when I was running around Hammerjack, so I've had on Bud Becker this week and Tommy Conwell. The craziness of Baltimore Positive, Don. I want to give you a little story because you love talking about what we've done and what we're building here and Best of Baltimore and who we're having on the crab cake tour and all that. I had Tommy Conwell on last week, and I have one of his old T-shirts from the 80s. It's got a hole in it, the whole deal. And he remembers me as the reporter, right? He had no idea I was only 17, 18. He just literally just found this out 35 years later. And we've known each other all this time. So we put the piece up online, and the Tommy Conwell fan club gets a hold of it on Facebook, and it goes viral in Jersey and in Philly, right? And they all agree on one thing, Don. They love Tommy Conwell and they hate the host of that show. They all agree on that. So it's great to be hated in Philadelphia. And I said, I'm an old sports guy. I'm like Hulk Hogan. I'm like bring it on. But the sports side of me, when it comes to no hitters, and Luke and I went through this, and Luke's bored with my stories about walking out of no hitters or walking into no hitters or Juan Nieves and I'm going to share the story that my son saw the Hideo Nomo no-hitter, called me that night to go. Do you know where I was? And this leads back to you. I was with Brian Recker at the Rec.
There you go.
Seeing Mike Peters, my dear friend from the Alarm and Lifesaver Leukemia Warrior, beat leukemia 3 times. LoveHopeStrength.org is his foundation to save lives. He does the same thing we do here with There Goes My Hero, swabs for the registry. And I was with Mike Peters that night at the rec room, and my son hit me, and he's like, hey, Dad, I'm going to the Oriole game. And I'm like, have a good time. It's April. Red Sox are in. We
It's
suck.
going
They're
to be
good.
cold.
Go have a good time. It's Monday. It was like a Monday night. I'm going out to the rec room to see my dude, Mike Peters from the Alarm, and I'm sitting in there watching it on TV. My kid called me because you didn't text back then, right? And he has seen a no hitter, and I've only sideways walked in and out. So I need to know your stories on this, because
Well,
if Palmer were calling the game, if Joan Jett were here, she'd be talking about having gone to the Palmer no hitter. I need to hear your deal with all things no hitter
sure.
before my time.
Oh no. I look forward to it, and as it was happening just the other day, I thought, man, alive, this just upends the recon. We're going to put politics on hold. My good friend, our good
Thank
friend,
God our audience is saying, by the way.
our good friend Fraser Smith is looking over our shoulder, paying tribute to Fraser and all things Baltimore positive this week by posting his picture as my virtual background. Also, a big sports fan, as you know, along with everything else. But
Well, and
Nestor,
one of the reasons he intimidated me when I was young, and this is the God's honest truth. So let's do the math. I got my job at the Evening Sun in January of '86, January 6th. Len Bias died on June 19th, 1986. Okay. So I was 17 years old, working in the Evening Sun newsroom, which was a very serious place. This kind of hair, didn't go so well there. And Fraser was, the reporter reporting on everything in regard to cocaine, Brian Tribble, Len Bias, Lefty, the Chancellor, all of that. So, like, Fraser was always beating around the sports thing because the sports guys, the reporters were in on that. Molly Dunham and Ken Davis, the people that had covered all of that. And maybe Ken Davis wasn't the son. But either way, at that point in my life, Fraser was tied to sports, and sports was news, right? As much as they stick to sports, stick in the toy department. We had just lost the Colts. Len Bias just dropped dead 2 days after the draft. Like the news department was involved in sports. It was involved in every facet of financing and trying to get a football team back here, trying to get this thing built at that point, right? So like Fraser was sports and poly. You could not have sports background if you worked at the
oh,
paper.
I
Sports
mean,
was too important to the city.
Fraser, the ultimate Renaissance man, and boy, do I think of how he would have enjoyed this yesterday. And you know what's fun, Nestor, in the age of social media and the connections that we have, is to watch some of our quote unquote, and I don't mean it in terms of just dog years, but our old buddies like Dan Rodricks and Michael Olesker, and you would mock Rodricks and Lesker and me and say we're always drinking the orange Kool-Aid. Rafael Alvarez. I mean, to watch our buddies celebrate yesterday, it was fascinating. And here's the neat thing about what John Means did. There are so many great themes to me coming out of this month of Oriole baseball and this John Means story. Let's start with the simple one. My wife's in the other room. I was off yesterday. We actually rescheduled some Baltimore Positives because I was playing in a golf tournament. And as I get in the car, we're playing down in Queenstown, down in Kent Island. And as I get in the car, it's the first inning, and we're coming across the bridge. And I say to my son-in-law, Means throws about 7 pitches in the first inning. And I say, this is an amazing story. This kid is locked in like I've seen very few pitchers locked in the entire time I've been watching baseball. We go when they get up near Route 2 and comes back out for the second inning, and he probably throws 12 pitches. And I'm going, this is pretty remarkable. I mean, the kid throws nothing but strike. Now, this is the second inning. And I said to my son-in-law, I think he's thrown strike one to every hitter so far. You never see that in baseball. One of the things that drives me crazy, Nestor, because we know if you
nibbling on the corners, getting behind in the count.
Well, we're going to get to one of your favorite people. We're going to get to Ray Miller because you can't talk about yesterday's game.
You know, it is funny when I thought about Ray Miller and I hear his voice in that Ohio, and I can hear him saying my name. You know what I mean? I can hear Johnny Oates saying my name in his Southern drawl. Like but Ray, I hear Lou Baker. I hear from Major League.
We're going to come back to Ray and ask you to reminisce a little bit. So, I mean, he knew, right? Work fast, throw strikes, change speeds, which is clearly what Means does. We know that major league hitters hit about 70 points less when they start 0-1. So the math seems, in an age of cybermetrics, seems pretty clear to me. If a hitter hits 70 points less when they start 0-1, 0-1 becomes pretty important. And I was thinking yesterday, we love the Bruce Zimmerman story, and Marty Gary, recent guest on our show, his nephew, and Zimmerman's stuff, with the exception, and it's a major exception, people are going to say, that Means has maybe one of the best changeups ever. And that's not hyperbole. Maybe one of the best changeups ever in the history of the game. But Zimmerman's stuff is pretty comparable to Means' stuff, with the exception, and now I go back to our guy, Scotty McGregor, that right now, at this point in time, and it's always a point in time, John Means can literally put the ball wherever he wants it.
I would compare this to Keuchel, in their system and where the training is and the way they're seeing things and the way they're seeing their mechanics. And working on the refined parts of baseball. These guys are supposed to be baseball geniuses. They're supposed to take the good and make them great. I think that's the differentiator with the Purple football team, quite frankly, is the Purple football team knows what it wants, gets what it wants, drafts for what it wants. I think you saw that last week, and then tries to implement it. I don't think we ever had that going on here. I mean, I know McPhail maybe had that for a minute, but he was more about budget, because he was here to make money, because that's the way his old man was wired. That's the way the old man was wired when he hired him. But Duquette had a beautiful mind for baseball, and I think McPhail had a beautiful mind for baseball, but I think the kind of rank and file people they had around them, for sure, the Stockstill family that was hanging on from the Dominican from 30 years, the crazy stuff that's going on in this franchise with this goofy family running this thing for 30 years, has not allowed for Steplat in a way, the Oriole way. It was the Angelos way, which is effed up, and I think that's very obvious. So again, this is not that. This is these guys having a different way of looking at baseball than it's been looked at here since Earl Weaver had note cards when nobody had them.
And as I always say, I'm
Ray Miller.
Where you and I, and again, I always encourage you. I'm not interested in looking back at what Peter did or what Peter didn't do. It's just not the way I'm.
That's a politician to you.
It's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
But that's why the place is empty.
No, it's not.
Unless they're willing to address that, that's why it's empty.
You're wrong.
Well,
it's nothing to do. It's nothing to do with the politician in me. It has everything to do with the need to try to make sense and feel good about where we're heading. It's dwelling on the past. Nothing ever.
I'm not dwelling on the past. The past is their reality.
Well, but
it's their reality.
Okay.
That nobody was watching the game Wednesday when it happened.
Well, that's not their reality, Nestor. That's COVID. And as I said to you, I was right. Wait a minute. I was right on this.
Next week we're going to talk about the Preakness and the shrinkage of that.
You went down, Nestor.
It's going to be somebody else's fault.
Nestor, stop. You went down this same road with the Ravens. And I was right. When the Ravens were not playing well at the end of the Flacco era and at the time of the kneeling and everything, you said, they're gone forever. I said, no, they're not. As soon as we start being dominant again, the stadium will be packed again. And the stadium was packed again pre-COVID. Once the Orioles.
It was. I follow the StubHub prices, so I know where the real demand is. The real
Well,
demand is nowhere
but
near where the demand was in
well, that may
2006.
be
That's
true
just
across
true.
the NFL, but in terms of
But
people
yeah, and
coming,
that's a spectator sport. Like, there's a lot on the
well,
backside of this. To your point, I would agree with you. Looking back on anything that happened before COVID, for most things, is going to be problematic
well,
at the
I
very
just don't want
least.
to
At the
focus.
very
I have
least.
no interest in focusing on what Peter did or didn't do. But if if it's John Angelos or whoever is in charge now, they made a bold decision 3 years ago, which was long overdue, to bring in a general manager and an assistant general manager in Mike Elias and an assistant general manager in Sid Medall, who were totally going to restructure this thing. And now, 3 years later, it's pretty clear that the rebuild is on track. And train can always come off the tracks, but unless something unusual happens, it might even be a tad ahead of schedule. And let's take Means, because that's the celebration we're having here. Means was about to quit baseball. And these guys, I mean, I still don't understand it, Nestor. I'll be the first. I wasn't good at physics. Okay. I was a social science guy. But these guys wrapped their arms around Means and said, we've got some different ideas about spin rate and cybermetrics and all this stuff. Give us a chance. And all of a sudden, this kid who was a low round draft pick, who was getting ready to quit and go back and sell cars or whatever he was going to do, teach school, coach baseball, I don't know, but he was getting ready to quit baseball, all of a sudden gets some success. And then all of a sudden goes to spring training and earns a spot. And now going back, this is beyond now a little blip. And I think this is what McDonald.
Well, there's a lot of guys. Tom Brady, Steph Curry, some of these people that were sort of overlooked guys
Right.
that make that. Jake Arrieta was a guy that had everything, like Schilling, right? Had it all, could never figure it out. Then they figure it out, and you're kind of shocked when they do
Yeah.
figure it out, right?
Well, and you look at what Means has done, and as I said, if you go back to the last 4 or 5 starts of last year, we now are in a 9 or 10 start cycle where, I mean,
it's
you'll
Koufaxy. I would agree with you.
it's Koufaxian, it's Pedro-ish. Yeah, it's crazy good. And I guess we're at the point where we have to say that unless he hurts his arm, it's really, really good stuff. I mean, yeah, here's the most exciting thing for my wife, okay, who was in the other room reading her book. And you want some stories? I'll tell you a Messina story. How I screwed poor Moose out of his. I'm convinced to this day I screwed him and cost him his no hitter at at the ballpark. But she's in the other room, and I said to her, "Hey, babe, we got 9 more outs, and the kid has a no hitter." She goes, "What?" And so she puts her book down. She comes in the other room, right? No hitter. Everybody wants to see. You
Everybody
can
stops.
imagine.
Well, we sent
You
the
can
WNST
imagine.
text out, and like that
Uh,
sort of that stopped everybody.
yeah, I wasn't sure that was the right thing to do. I was like, "Oh, Nestor, you just sent out a text. I'm old school. What did we just?" But then I saw Means chatting it up in the
Don't be
dugout. I thought, "Okay,
superstitious. Don't be
yeah,
superstitious.
yeah, put that aside." But my grandson was excited, and I really, and I know he did not have a no hitter, but boy, I couldn't help but think about McGregor. Now, you said Means throws a little harder, not much. Scotty could hit 91 or 92. I mean, he was more often in 88, 89, but he could hit. But what McGregor could do is, if Dempsey wanted that ball on the black inside at the knee, it was there. And when Scotty, and I'll tell you what, Nestor, this gets us to your boy Ray Miller, because you and I actually we interviewed Ray. I was out at Hart Road one day, as you said, when we were talking sports, and Ray called in as a guest, and you and I interviewed Ray, and I
Your
loved it.
memories. See, you have a memory of this that I don't
Oh,
have.
I
So
have a
go ahead.
very vivid memory
Was
of
Ray in the
talking.
studio?
No, he
Ray
was on
was.
the phone. Ray called in,
Ray called in.
and
Okay, all
we
right.
had an
Because I mean,
interview.
I
And
have pictures of Ray in the studio with me. It was a different era, man.
yeah,
They were just a different
Now
Just a
he,
different.
he called in, and here's where I'm going with this question. I remember what I asked him because I loved Scott McGregor. My wife loved him. Why did she love him? She knew she was going to be home before 10 o'clock. I mean, McGregor's games were anywhere between 2:15 and 2:45. Yesterday, John Means' game, I looked it up this morning. I went MLB and I looked up time 2:25. I mean, you want to talk about fixing baseball? Let's have some more 2 hour and 25-minute baseball games. That will fix it. So I said to Ray Miller, I said, Ray, my sense is, and it felt good. There you go. It I said, my sense is, Ray, that McGregor's stuff wasn't significantly different at the end of his career than it was when he was pitching these 2 hour and 20-minute masterpieces. What I get a sense of, Ray, is that it's a game of literally inches, and I mean inches, and that with his stuff, that's not 100 miles an hour. It's not Jacob DeGrom. That if you miss now by an inch or two, major league hitters will make you pay. And Ray Miller said, Don, it's exactly what happened. And he said it's not that he had a sore arm, it's that he lost just a tad of arm strength. And when you lose just a tad of arm strength, you're no longer able to get it to exactly the spot. Well, right now, I mean, I thought of Miller not only because he passed away and Means pitches it on the day he passes away, but I thought his arm strength and what they've done with his spin rate and is so Ray Miller that what a tribute to Miller yesterday. Now, before we talk about no hitters in Oriole history, and I'll talk to you again. I said about how I ruined. I love these pictures for those of you watching on YouTube and Facebook. Nestor is showing some
the Ray Miller thing. This is he and I.
I want you to talk.
In the
I want you
locker
to
room
talk.
'97.
Well, that's where I want you to go. I want you to. You've had special relationships with a number of athletes over the year. I want you to talk. There was some heartfelt emotion in your social media yesterday regarding Ray. And I don't want you to
he
focus.
wasn't a jerk to me, he was a great guy.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, Nestor. What do you remember about? Well, how did you meet Ray Miller?
I probably met Ray Miller at the Games store in East Point Mall with Kevin Eck in 1979. Every week they had a player at East Point Mall. I actually met Kevin Eck first time in my life there when Billy Smith was signing autographs. Rich Dower, Jeff Tackett, they all came to East Point Mall. So I probably met Ray Miller there. Summer '79, my dad and I wrote at length about this in my book about my father back in 2006 when I led the walkout on Peter Angelo's. And we sat in section 10, so we were always in left field. We were always in the fair territory at Memorial Stadium. We were always they wouldn't let you sit in the first row because they're afraid you're falling over, leaning over, whatever, going all Jeffrey Mayer before. But you sat back. So we were always in the second, third. There's nobody out there. It was 1979. There were 40 people out in the bleacher. We were real bleacher bums. Took the bus out, G&A, Coney Island hot dog, the whole deal. But Ray Miller would walk in front of me every night as some disco song was playing. That Dennis Martinez would have his jacket on, a towel around him,
Oh, yeah.
walking out. And the rabbit would always have his hands. He always had his hands back like this, So he would always walk out past Pat Santarone's garden there, and there's Ray Miller. So I got closer to Ray Miller than I did to most of the other, because he walked by all the time, and we would always yell, "Mr. Miller, give us baseball!" And I told Mike Hargrove the day he got hired that he was the only one that ever threw me a ball. Mike Hargrove threw me a ball in left field, shagging one day. Pat Kelly threw me a ball. The Reverend threw me a ball once too. But so
I'd
Ray
rather
Miller,
walk with the bases loaded, Rev. I'd rather walk with the bases loaded.
Well, Ray Miller was like royalty to me as a 10-year-old boy, because Mike Flanagan, Scott McGregor, Dennis Martinez, Sammy Stewart, they would all walk by out in 1970s. Don Stanhouse, the whole deal. Who's on my LinkedIn, buddy? What's up, Stan the man?
Six-pack. Full pack, not six pack, full pack.
Ray Miller, I met Ray Miller when he came back to be the pitching coach here, brought on by Angelos from Pittsburgh to keep an eye on Davey Johnson. And I mean, listen, for my relationship with Mike Flanagan to be sort of famous in our relationship at the end of his life, and he and I were very close. I didn't know Mike Flanagan at this period of my life at all. And Mike Flanagan was very intimidating to me. I talk about Fraser Smith. Mike Flanagan was very intimidating to me because he was the pitcher. He was sort of this sullen guy in the corner, studying things. He knew everybody knew him, and I didn't. And so all of his playing career, all of his broadcasting career, all of his pitching coach career, I never messed with Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan came on to me listening to my national radio show, invited me to lunch, and I was blown away. So, like, then that became our relationship. But I knew Ray Miller really well without knowing Mike Flanagan real well, and they were best friends. So, Ray was just the pitching coach who was just always, from the minute I approached him, and Cal Sr., I didn't know well. Cal Sr. was one of those guys where you didn't want to rub him the wrong way or go over and say something stupid. And I don't know why it's certain factions of the locker room were that way in the 90s. I mean, I was their age. Messina and I, fine. Brady Anderson and I, great. The Ben McDonald, phenomenal. Rick Sutcliffe, great. But there were certain guys in the clubhouse I didn't know very well, and Elrod and I were great. But Ray Miller was one of the holdover guys that I could sit and talk about stuff in 1979 or Earl Weaver, ask him stuff. But more than that, he really struck me when I talked to him. It wasn't my age, my pitching, my this, my that, Aparicio, which went a long way with a lot of people. When you tell Roberto Alomar you're related to Louis Aparicio, you get a different kind of relationship with him, right? But Ray Miller, it was just such a normalcy to him that he had a teacher about him. I guess in the way Marvin Lewis or the way
Well,
you do. He was a
Nestor,
teacher. He was a
God,
teacher
I'm
of
going to
young
interrupt you.
people.
I'm going to interrupt you there for a minute because you just used a word that now as an old guy, 70 years old, I I think, and it's true whether you're in entertainment, journalism, elective politics, you used the word normalcy. There is no substitute. A lot of people would substitute as synonymous genuine. I guess the word I often use is genuine. You cannot teach it. And it is a wonderful, wonderful human trait. I was really encouraged the other day. Again,
Well, you can't
trying
be a
to
teacher without it, right? I mean, that's a special gift,
very.
right?
I guess you can. It's very difficult. The great teachers certainly have it. The great elected officials certainly have it. I mean, we've talked a lot about Baltimore County Executive John Oshevsky, who's announced that he's going to run for county executive again as opposed to governor. Certainly, one of his strengths as an East Side Sparrows Point Dundalk kid is his genuineness. People look at him and say, "Boy, I like that guy. He's a
Well,
he's a
let
good
me
guy."
let me talk about that for a minute then, because this would
Dutch has it in spades, right? I mean, no,
yeah,
Dutch is the poster child, right?
but this would play into this, right? Where so Ray Miller comes into that situation in the mid '90s where it's Caustic and Davey Johnson. He's been in Pittsburgh with Jim Leland, and he's a genius, and he failed as a manager in Minnesota. And the perception, Flanagan got to Angelos and said, "We need Ray Miller." Jim Palmer got to Angelos and said, "We need Ray Miller." Rick Dempsey went to Peter Angelos and said, "We need Ray Miller." So Ray Miller comes in. And this is Davey Johnson for Pat Dobson, who had some off the field issues with Davey Johnson that led to more off the field issues with Davey Johnson that are, widely reported, right? So Ray wasn't in Davey's Mafia. So there immediately there's, the kind of thing probably happened with Stuart Berger in your era. A
Sure.
management friction issue, right?
Good analysis. Yeah.
So Ray Miller for me, and when I say normalcy, comes in and I can just almost hear him in sort of that I said it's like Lou Baker from Major League. And if you remember Ray's voice, he had this Ohio sort of thing about him, and he just kind of tell you like it is, and he wouldn't pull any punches with you. He wasn't going to give you some line of shit. That's just the way he was. And I would always find a guy like him when these guys were making millions of dollars. You know what I mean? I always found him to be one of those guys that really resented it. And I remember a clip where he really resented it, where the team had quit on him and he was going to get fired. And he had a very famous clip that we played early days of NST, which said, "Those are the guys in there making millions of dollars. Go in there and ask them what the hell's going on." And and there was that divide when these guys were shooting up steroids. He knew it. Flanagan knew it. Brady Anderson knew it. Everybody in the locker room knew it, So this is that era. This is 97 where they're trying to get Mark McGwire out, get Juan Gonzalez out,
Right.
get Jose Canseco out. I mean, a lot of drugs floating around. And he knew it. And he knew better and he knew different. But these guys didn't look like Mark Belanger anymore. They look like cue sticks. So keeping in mind all of that he saw open drug use that he could do nothing about in the game, that he had a teacher in him that was very bemused, I think, by Ben McDonald, number 1 pick. Let's see you throw the ball, son. I was here with Palmer and Stone. Let me tell you what I did for Flanagan. Hey, if there's Flanagan over there, you go ask Flanagan what the hell I did for him. So that was Ray, and same thing with Leo Mazzoni. Those old school guys. So when you marvel, I find it fascinating that you marvel and compare Ray Lewis or Ray Miller to John Means, and I would bring in Leo Mazzoni, who had them all. What's Leo Mazzoni got to prove to you? You know what I mean? There's Maddox there, there's Sklavin there, there's Smoltz there. And that's how Ray Miller felt about it when he came back in '97. He's like, right. I don't need Jimmy Key or Scott Kamenicki or telling me how to write the book on pitching. This is how we do it, So there was a little bit of that. And he was Angelos's guy, and it didn't work out. And then Albert Bell gets saddled in here, and here comes Hargrove. And I mean, it was just a mess. I mean, I've written books about it. You can go read about it, the Pure Principles. But I loved Ray. I love Ray because you know why? Ray never lied to me. Ray never ducked me or anybody else. And this is the normalcy I talk about. This is why I love Brian Billick. He's given me a chance to talk about the people I love. And they never said, I'm not here to talk about the past. They never ducked they never did any of that. They just said, what do you want to know? I got nothing to hide. And I love those people. I love those people. And I'll tell you anything you want to know. And, if it needs to be off the record because I don't want it in the paper, I'll just let you know what's going on. And you can always come to me, and you don't have to worry about me putting you in the wrong direction to make you look foolish on the radio or in print or on TV or wherever your pursuits are. I'm not going to lie to you and make a fool of you. And that's who Ray Miller was. And I feel like he led his life that way. And I think most people around him would say that about him.
No, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful tribute. And, I think it was a great moment, and we all thought about Ray. So Ray, rest in peace, and thanks for the great.
And by the way, here's Ray telling me the truth one more time. There you go. If you're out on our YouTube, there's Ray. That's why I'm still talking to Ray because because Ray was always honest, and all these years, 30 years in, I appreciate that more than anything. I really.
Well, it's a wonderful trait. Now let's.
That's why Jane Miller still talks to you.
You say, yeah, Jim, my good buddy, love Jane Miller. Let's talk in the little bit of time we have left about some of the memories. And I hope our listeners are thinking about their memories of no-hitters. First of all, Nestor, I was fascinated that, since Palmer pitched his back in 1969, I think it was August 13th against the Oakland Athletics, I did not realize that's the longest streak of any major league team in the big leagues without a no-no. In that time. So we somebody else now has the longest streak because we broke ours. Poor Messina. I couldn't remember, and I couldn't find it. You probably know it off the top of your head. I think he had several one-hitters, but he had one at Memorial Stadium.
You mean Camden Yards?
No, Camden Yards. Camden Yards, not Memorial Stadium. And we got to the 7th inning, and I'm sitting with my good friends, Eric Hallengren and Louise Ram, and Linda and I are there.
Do you remember who you're with? Because it's that
Oh, my God. I remember where I was sitting along third base side. Remember who I was with. And I said to them, and it was before cell phones, right? So I'm going, holy crap. We're going to see. He's unhittable. We're going to see a no-hitter. What can we do? Nobody's got to. I said, wait a minute. I think they sell Instamatics down at the concession stand. So I jump out, I run down. Sure enough, they've got Instamatics. I didn't even ask them.
$27.
I don't remember. Yeah, outrageous. I said, give me the, I need it. I need the camera. Run back up. I'm all ready. I swear to God, I take the first picture, and the guy gets a hit, and Moose loses his nose. So I'm convinced to this day.
Was that the Sandy Alomar no-hitter?
It was I think it was.
Yeah.
My Instamatic cost Moose his no-hitter. So that's one of my memories. But, I go back to 1958. And again, believe it or not, a little 8-year-old kid in Catonsville living on Garden Ridge Road, loving the Orioles along with my brother and my mother, who was a lifelong Oriole fan. And we got Gus with the big glove that Paul Richards dreamed up to catch Hoyt Wilhelm. And Hoyt pitches a no-hitter. 1958. Well, believe it or not, show you how different the lifestyles were for players in 1958. My section of Catonsville, I lived in an apartment most of my life. My mom was a single mom. We lived in an apartment. I always joked. I said, I'm sure the other family said, hey, those Mohler kids, they live on the wrong side of the tracks. We didn't know we were on the wrong side of the tracks, but I'm sure that's what people said. Well, Wilhelm lived up the street in a little, I want to say, I remember it as a duplex. I don't think it was a row home. It was a duplex, where two houses are a small little house on a street called Altaview Avenue in Catonsville. And all the kids would occasionally run by and knock on Hoyt's door and say, hi, Mr. Wilhelm. He couldn't have been nicer. Hoyt would come out, and if he wanted something. But I mean, it was
Let me show you how to throw the knuckler, kid.
Different time and a place. But he didn't say, get the hell out of here, kid.
Well, it's like pictures of Mickey Mantle playing stickball in the streets with kids in New York, right?
It
like,
was
literally.
exactly the same thing. So then,
because it's probably like magic to some degree, because if you're Mickey Mantle and you stop for 10 minutes with kids and you play, nobody's got on Twitter. There's no, nobody's coming running except the 12 kids that are out there. They have a moment. Maybe somebody's got a camera and you move on, like literally, right? It's not like that anymore.
But it is remarkable how you remember everything, Nestor. I mean,
did you ever meet Hoyt Wilhelm?
Yeah, he came out. Yeah, so what I'm saying, we'd knock on his door, little rugrats, little toe heads, and he would be nice, and he'd come out and sign our ball. And
I had a different experience. We had a couple in the driveway. We called them a Blondie and Dagwood. They were old, nasty, get off my lawn, right in the 70s.
Right.
And we hit the ball into there. They would take the ball.
Oh, we had
a different kind of neighbor. You know what I mean?
We had those, and my kids had those in one or two neighborhoods.
Blondie
my kids were always hitting balls into the other people's yards, and you'd have to go beg for the ball back. It's like in Sandlot, right?
Well, I've got more no-hitter stories than anybody for not having one, right? I told these stories to Luke. Do you know all my no-hitter stories, right? You've heard these stories?
A bunch of them, sure.
Well, my kid went to the Hideo Nomo.
You said he started, right? You started with that.
I was at the end of the Nieves no-hitter in '87. I was at his locker. I was in there when the champagne was flying. So I drove out there in the 6th inning, like you, right? Like 6th inning, like Linda. I put the book down. I got in the car over on Kane Street and I went. So and Jack Gibbons. I was one of 3 reporters at the game that night. I got out there in the 7th inning. I watched that final out when, Yount laid out, out in right center field. I mean, Yount was a shortstop, the old guy at that point, right? 15 years in his career, 13 years in his career. Not that I know anything about baseball, that he came up in 75 or anything like that, but it was 87. So I was at the Nieves locker getting quotes. And I remember how small he was, and, Rob Deere's in there. It was the old Memorial Stadium right outside the bird feed room,
Well, you mentioned Yount making that. I'm glad you said that, Nestor, because I asked my grandson right away, who was texting me like crazy yesterday during the means. I mean, you were watching the game. My heart, I almost choked on that last pitch by Means. I swear to gosh, I thought the guy had hit a soft line drive into left field. When it came off his bat, I thought, oh no. And then somebody else posted on Twitter, I thought that catch was so reminiscent of Cal catching the last ball in the 83 World Series. It was the same kind of play, but when it left the bat, I thought, are you kidding me?
Well, you always think that after the 7th inning.
Your heart's in your throat. 1968, Nestor, I'm a senior at Mount St. Joe. I'm a senior getting ready to graduate in April. Tommy Phoebus pitches a no-hitter. Yeah, you think that was a lot of fun in Irvington when the St. Joe boy throws a no-hitter in April for the Orioles? That was big doings
But the
down
closest
there.
you've been was the Messina night. That's very close. I mean, that
That
was
was the closest, yeah, because
I broadcast that night. I
he was
broadcast from
unhittable.
Hooters. And Moose and I were close, and his brother and my girlfriend Robin and I had not seen each other in a while, and she came down to Hooters for the show with the intention of going to the game. We were going to the game that night. We decided to not go to the game and to walk to Little Italy and have dinner because it was a Friday night. And I told Luke this.
Right.
Back in the day, I was on the
I
radio
remember
2
that.
to 6, Monday through Friday. It was I was AM radio, selling my own thing before I had the station. This is right before I got the station, 97. And I was broadcasting live down there. And Friday night was the one night I didn't have to go to the game because I wasn't on the radio Saturday. I wasn't on the radio Sunday. Anything that was reactive to the game would be kind of old news by Monday when I went on the radio at 2 o'clock, right? So Friday was like sort of I told Luke I went to 65 home games a year, probably 20 road games, never missed games in New York, went to Toronto, went to Cleveland. I did all of that, right? Especially when they were good, 96, 97. I mean, it was, so this was a sort of I'm going to have a nice dinner. I got a date. We'll watch the game. We were in a dining room where the game wasn't on, and I heard people buzzing. And I'll never forget, I got up to go to the bathroom, and I looked up on the TV, and it was like the 5th inning. It was a no-hitter, and the bar's buzzing, and I went back to the table, and I'm like, we got to get the check. I said, one more inning, we're getting the check. And I had a parking pass, and like I could have gotten back in. I was going to go down to the locker room, I said, I got to be there at the end. We got to get back by the 9th. We got to go. And she understood. She's like, yeah, let's go. We'll figure it out. And I'm like, I got to get back. And she wanted me to get back. And we got rid of the check. 7th inning, where you were with the camera, I was literally in front of the Holocaust Museum on Lombard Street in my car trying to get back. I could see the stadium lights, like.
So it's your
like
fault. So it's your fault. So it's not totally on me. It's on you as well. You and I both cost Moose his no-hitter.
I don't have any superstition. I walked out of a no-hitter. The one no-hitter I went to, I left early. You know that story, right?
No, I don't. And with that, because we're going to have to run and interview another gubernatorial candidate. And with this, walking out of a no-hitter.
Labor Day weekend, 2001. I was interviewing Tony Gwynn. He was retiring. Cal Ripken was retiring. I had already sat with Cal. I was nationally syndicated. I offered my son a chance to go with me to Birmingham, Alabama, to see Leonard Skinner play, to see UCLA play Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And then I was flying to San Diego on Labor Day to see the Arizona Diamondbacks play the Padres, interview Curt Schilling at that point, and Bob Melvin. They were about to win the World Series, and interview Tony Gwynn on that Sunday night. That Sunday night, I sat in Jack Murphy Stadium with Tony Gwynn in a private area watching Messina almost no-hit the Red Sox at Fenway Park. We stopped the interview. Tony's like, we got to stop the interview here. Messina's your boy. Your boy. He always say, your boy Messina's throwing a no-hitter. And we watched and stopped it. The next day, I broadcast live from Jack Murphy Stadium all afternoon. Tony La Russa sat in with me. Bruce Bochy sat in. Kevin Towers, the late, great Kevin Towers. I had the interview with Tony Gwynn in the bag. We played that. It was Labor Day special ESPN live from Jack Murphy Stadium, the Q, the Padres and the Cardinals. First inning, I'm eating. I made a phone call to United. I was on a flight through Chicago to get home. They got me home at 10 in the morning. I got a flight through LA to leave a little earlier. Third inning, I got up, walked out of Jack Murphy Stadium with a ticket and a press pass, having broadcast all day, got on a plane to LA, puddle jumper, got on the LA plane, fell asleep, woke up at BWI. It's 5:50 in the morning. Sun's coming up. I walk out. I get on the Park and Go shuttle bus. I look down on the Park and Go, and they had a stack of USA Todays. It's 2001. In the corner is the celebratory picture. It says, Smith no hits Padres in San Diego. I walked out in the third inning, and I remember looking at the scoreboard out in right field, and I said, wouldn't it be something if I walk out of a no-hitter? Don, I walked out of Bud Smith's no-hitter in San Diego. So there. That's all I've got for you. And it turned down
Well,
the
that's
Hideo Nomo game. And I was at the Jason Hamill game 10 years ago, Easter. Then that was the closest I've ever been where I sat there and was like, get a camera, like this might happen. And it didn't happen. So I've never been to a no-hitter. I've cheated around it. It's the Holy Grail. I had an invite from Scotty P to go to David Cohn's perfect game. We were set to go to New York that day. Expos. Springsteen was playing Brendan Byrne that night. Scotty P had to call out on me, and we didn't go, and I missed the. So it's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
Well, there's nothing
I've
like
given up
talking.
on it. It's like Wimbledon. I've given up on it.
Nothing like talking no-hitters. We've got some more Birdwatch next week, along with politics. A lot going on.
It's like my uncle that
Recon.
voted for Trump. I gave up on him.
Hey, let me just tell you, I'm gonna throw this out there as a tease, and then we'll get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
I have become fixated on one of the stats in baseball that I really never have paid much attention to, and I am now totally fascinated by, and it is run differential. And we're going to talk about this next week because I'm going to ask people to go look at the National League East. And let me just run this down real quick because we do have to get out of here. In the National League East, the Phillies are in first place. Their run differential means they've scored 14 fewer runs than their opponents. The Mets are in second place. They've scored 11 fewer runs.
These are dumb stats to me.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
It gets even dumber. Atlanta, -9. The Nats, -21. Here you go. The last place, Miami Marlins, +18. I don't get it. Dumb stat. We're going to come back and talk about it.
I don't think it's indicative of anything.
I'm going to talk about that. We love the Recon. Let's go talk to some gubernatorial candidates.
I am Nestor. He is Don. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore positive.